Many of you notice I usually bring the question box in about 6:30. All right? Yeah. So if those of you who don't make the question box, you can always come up here and just put it in the basket before I start the chanting. So here we go, the questions today. Dear Ajahn Brahm, could you please comment on how someone meditated and could live without food and water for days and still survive as reported? Thank you, with metta. Oh, that was that fellow in Nepal, that young boy. And I know I saw those reports last year. There was supposed to be this young kid who was sitting under a tree, meditating all day and not eating and not drinking. But they did actually put a curtain around him at night. But apparently, I think someone said that National Geographic did a documentary on him and actually followed him for 24 hours and he actually wasn't eating or sleeping or drinking. Did anyone see that? You did see it? So it was real. So how can that happen? How? Even some of you, just going without your afternoon and evening meal was tough enough. Think about going without any meals. And how long was he doing that? He was doing that for days and weeks and months, wasn't he?
But then don't know how he disappeared.
And then he disappeared because he probably didn't eat. That's why he disappeared. He faded away. No, it's. There was also, I remember, another. Was it report done? Always love these weird and strange things which happen in the world. There's supposed to be this Hindu yogi who wasn't eating or drinking either. It's not that hard to go without food, but to go without water is very, very, very difficult. And apparently that he was in this modern hospital somewhere in, I think Delhi somewhere, and had CCTV cameras on him all time, 24 hours. And he wasn't sneaking anything in. And he was actually somehow manufacturing water in his mouth. So he'd always have a wet mouth. That was another really weird thing. Which just goes to show you, just actually the mind is much more powerful than the body. And can do things which scientists get bamboozled about. And they don't know what's going on. And I'm sure you've always had, each one of you have had some weird thing which has happened in your life. Which is completely unexplainable. And this is what happens sometimes, because the mind is very, very, very strong and powerful. And the more you get into deep meditation, the more you can do weird and strange things. So those of you who are having good meditations, tonight sit under that tree and don't eat for the rest of the retreat. And then, at the very least, you'll get National Geographic coming to do a documentary on you. And wouldn't that be neat? Okay. The other thing is that poor boy, I think the reason why he did have to disappear was because, when you do strange things like that, people always think you're very weird and they give you lots of attention. You become very famous for the wrong reasons, and it means that you get no peace and quiet at all. You're a weird guy. Which is why that the Buddha said very clearly that if anyone develops any of those psychic powers, just keep them quiet, don't show them off. Because if you did, they wouldn't be coming to see you to listen to Dhamma or answer their questions. They'll just be coming to see you because you're a freak, like someone in a circus. And I still remember when I first came to Perth, and I was number 2 monk, and Ajahn Brahm, many of you remember him, he was a senior monk, and this little kid came one day to our centre in North Perth and said, "How much?" And Ajahn Brahm replied, "What do you mean, how much? How many centimetres?" "What do you mean, how many centimetres? What are you talking about?" He said, "How high can you levitate?" said the kid. "Go on, show me." And that's all the kid actually came for. To see a monk levitate and find out exactly how much he could do. And of course, I'm not interested in Buddhism, not interested in Dhamma, just interested in tricks, that's all. So because of that, the Buddha said, no, even if you can do those tricks, keep them quiet and don't show off, because otherwise you become a celebrity for the wrong reasons. Which is why the good monks will never let on. You know, the ones which have, there's only a few people who have got these psychic powers, but good monks never let on. But we can let on about other monks. And I don't know the last time I told you that story of, I was telling that story, what was I telling? I think in Hong Kong, about, because many of the people who met me in Hong Kong, I just went there a couple of weeks ago to give some talks. I was really surprised that the people who met me at the airport inside the terminal, they were the Cathay Pacific crew members who were Thais. I was really surprised at this, and I thought most people who work for like the airline of Hong Kong would be like Chinese Hong Kong people. But no, apparently that airline, they recruited a lot of Thai girls about 20 years ago, and they're still recruiting them to work as flight attendants. So a lot of these were meeting me, and I actually gave a talk to them in Cathay Pacific, and it was supposed to be for all crew members, but it was actually just basically the Thais came there. A lot of them were there. And because they were Cathay Pacific crew, I told them about Ajahn Brahm. And some of you know his story. Because this was fresh in my mind, because the story came from the monk Ajahn Brahm, who just came to Perth just before Ajahn Dhamma. You may remember he gave a talk one evening. Really nice monk. And Ajahn Brahm, he's the abbot of the monastery in California. And a couple of years ago, he received Ajahn Brahm, this Thai forest monk, who was visiting America from Thailand. And when he met him, I think Ajahn Brahm, I think his bag, like what we call it, the yarn, the monk's bag, the zip was caught or something, and so he's having trouble with that. And this Ajahn Brahm had just come off the plane and said, I can fix that. And so he opened up his robe, and in his underrobe, there's his vest, had all these pockets in his vest. And in those pockets, he saw about 4 or 5 knives. I asked him a couple of weeks ago, how long were those knives? Those small knives? I know, they're big ones. Big sharp knives, pliers, screwdrivers, so he could actually fix up sort of the zip on this monk's bag. And Ajahn Brahm, you just been inside the plane with that stuff on. And this is United States, the sort of the terror fear capital of the world. How do you do that? You can't do that. You can't take knives that long, not just one, about 4 or 5 of them, and screwdrivers, and goodness knows what else, in the cabin of a plane. So what happens? Don't you go through the security screen? He said, oh yeah, of course, every time I go through the security. Doesn't it go beep? He said, no, I just meditate as I'm going through. And he stops it going off. Now that's a true story. He does that. Good. I just checked it out with Ajahn Brahm a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, it's true, he does that. So don't have to worry when you're flying. Sort of Muslim terrorists can't do that. Only nice Buddhist, soft, pacifist monks. We're the only ones who can do that sort of stuff. It was true, he does that. But the best story of him was that when he sort of, looked at his passport, this Thai monk, he's a forest monk, like Thai forest monk, they're simple guys. When he looked at his passport, he had this really strange visa. It was a diplomatic visa for life. And he couldn't help but ask, well, what is a Thai monk, a forest monk, not someone, who's in Bangkok and just hobnobs with all the big shots. What is this ordinary Thai monk doing with a visa to enter the United States, diplomatic visa, for the rest of his life? How did you get that? And so the monk told the story. Apparently there was a Thai engineer who was working in NASA, the National Aeronautical and Space Agency in Houston, Texas. And what was happening was that NASA was installing a new mainframe computer. The stuff which did all the calculations. So this was multi-million-dollar stuff. And they installed it all, and they were programming it, and they could not get it to work. And every day it was not working. It was costing the agency, I don't know how many millions of dollars. So, and it doesn't matter what expense, they got all the experts from around the best universities in the US to try and fix it up. But could they fix it up? No one could fix it. And there was this Thai engineer suggested, well, if these people can't fix it up, and these are the best in the world, perhaps it must be something supernatural. And he said, I know a monk. He just happens to be in Houston at this time. He might fix it up. And that was Ajahn Brahm. So they invited him up into the headquarters of NASA, into the mainframe computer room. And there he sat in meditation and did a little bit of chanting. And as soon as he was finished, the computer worked perfectly. And out of gratitude for saving them millions of dollars and a lot of headaches. Goodness, it's NASA, it's an important, prestigious organization in the United States. So they used their contacts, and out of thanks, they gave this monk a special diplomatic visa for the rest of his life to come and go. Whenever their computer was down, he could come. He could come at any time. Now that's the psychic power which I think each one of you could use, wasn't it? Your computers are down, just zap. So some psychic powers are helpful. But you always talk about other monks, you never talk about your own, which is important. You keep them hidden, because sometimes that monk, he's old now, and sort of, he's getting towards the end of his life. But it's amazing, this monk can do such things. Which just shows just what the mind can actually do. It just goes through sort of these airport terminals, just with all these knives. Not just one, but 4 or 5. It's crazy. Anyway, it's a nice story. Any comments on that?
I hope monks are not suspect now, because one has got to.
Well, that's why so I'm very careful. I never told this in Singapore, because many people work for Singapore Airlines. And that every monk, they just won't get him through the screen, they give him strip search probably after that. But the point is that there's almost a fail-safe mechanism, because according to Buddhist understanding, that those psychic powers disappear if you start to break your precepts. And they're sort of founded on virtue. You've got to have a very, very pure mind to do things like that. So that, if you've got like bad thoughts of wanting to sort of ransom somebody or kill somebody or blow up an airline, you'd lose all those powers straight away. So there is like a safety mechanism there. So if anyone can get through that security with a knife, they're not going to do any problem. Anyway, Ajahn, this is not a question. Just... okay. Well, anyway. It's not a question, just a gentle reminder with kindness. That person who wrote the silly question, can they please try to behave from now on? I think that must be about the sexual question. Sexual question last night. Actually, did you throw that piece of paper away? I was going to sort of check okay. Anyway, but sometimes it's good to have a bit of fun and games. So don't make it too serious. Because, I know time is precious, and this is serious business becoming enlightened, because if you get a too serious mind, your mind becomes like hard. And when you become a bit soft, it becomes like this beautiful clay. If it's too silly, then the clay becomes like watery gunk, and you can't make anything out of it. But if it's just nice, and usually for most people who come on retreats like this, they're usually a bit too hard. That's why I like to soften them up with a few funny stories. Dear Ajahn Brahm, when you go on watching your breath, if nothing happens and it becomes boring and makes you sleepy, is there any alternative, such as controlling the breath? You can even make the breathing so slow and even appear to go away. I know they will not help you to get a nimitta, but it won't make you go to sleep. Don't be afraid of going to sleep in meditation. Because sometimes we disturb the whole process and trying to control it. And so this is radical sorts of teachings, because I don't know any other monk will tell you this. Most monks will tell you, fight the sleep, get rid of it, do something. There was this famous monk in Laos who this was before the Laos fell to the communists. And he was a very famous meditation teacher, and what he did was he would take his young disciple monks on this walk through the jungle all day. Now, you get tired enough walking, but jungles are just, the air is just so thick and it's hot and it's sweaty. You really tire out very quickly in jungle. And these were just local boys. So they were still tired. When they got to late afternoon, the abbot would always arrange to come to this clearing with these huge tall trees. And the trees would have platforms high on the branches. And the platforms were just like the size of these mats which we monks are sitting on, with no railings on the outside, just a flat wooden platform with a ladder going up. And he'd send each of these monks up to a separate tree, a separate platform. And then he'd take the ladder away and say, I'll be back tomorrow morning. And these monks had to sit all night. They couldn't lay down, they couldn't stretch their legs. And it was just a little platform about this size. Now, I don't know how many, 50, 100 feet above the ground. And they knew that if they started nodding, if they got too sleepy and fell, that would be it, they would die. And he said many monks got great meditation that night. But he didn't tell anything about the other monks who didn't get good meditation. So that, you always hear about the monks who survive such things. But I'm sure there's many monks who didn't survive and fell off. And you don't hear about those. That's going too far. That's going too forceful. Sure, for sometimes out of fear you stay awake. But you're not really learning about the nature of the mind and how it works. So if your breath is getting very still and boring, just stay with that. Don't disturb this whole process. Because what's happening, and somebody asked me this question in an interview, is that because you are not doing things, you're not controlling, you're making a lot of stillness, sure, at first the mindfulness is not strong enough, and what it sees it thinks is boring, there's nothing much to engage there, and sometimes because of boredom you do get into dullness. Don't worry about that. Keep still. Don't waste the energy, don't control and get upset or criticize yourself or have a fault-finding mind, I shouldn't be sleepy. Stay there, because the mindfulness starts to build up after a while, naturally. The mindfulness, the power of mindfulness comes from stillness, from not doing anything, but leaving things alone, being peaceful. So if you fight the sleepiness, you're actually hindering the whole process of empowering mindfulness. If you just make peace with it, be still with it, this is good enough, I'm happy to be here, then you find naturally the sleepiness and dullness starts to disappear. The mindfulness increases, and what you see never is boring. Because you have strong mindfulness, whatever you see, even this carpet here, is incredibly beautiful. There's so much going on there. With dull mindfulness, it's a boring, dirty old carpet. They had this here last year and the year before. It's about time they changed this dirty old threadbare carpet. Look, you can see in some places they've got this carpet in the centre over here to hide all of the places worn out. But when you get strong mindfulness, the simple things become very, very beautiful. And the beautiful things become incredible. Just because mindfulness gets strong. So if you are dull, if you are sleepy, just wait. It's just part of the whole process. Don't fight it. Don't get upset about it. Keep making peace with every moment. Door of my heart's open to this dullness. And if you keep still like that, eventually, mindfulness will build its strength naturally, and boredom just doesn't exist for you, whatever's happening. And sloth and torpor, sleepiness, you've just gone beyond that, because the mindfulness has been empowered. So this is part of the course. But don't think it's something wrong or something bad. It's just part of meditating. Keep making peace with it, be still with it, accept it, be kind to it, be gentle, and you'll find the mindfulness increases naturally. It's not that the breath is boring. It's not that you are sloth and torpor. It's just part of the path. So allow it to be.
I do one of the traditional ways of explaining to people, I remember some other monks not giving themselves things like meditation on death or something like that, which really wakes you up real quick.
It can do.
Yeah. Go there, don't do.
If you really want to get into some really nice meditation and stop wasting time, don't do anything. That's the old Rolls Royce meditation again. Make peace with it. And then so the mindfulness builds up and just the breath isn't boring. This is one of the important things of this retreat. Because if you follow those instructions, what happens is the mind of mindfulness starts to really build up and you become very alert and very awake. Everything becomes so easy. You can watch the breath easily. One of the reasons why people find it hard to watch the breath go in and go out is there's nothing wrong with their breath or their skill. It's just their mindfulness is not strong enough yet. They're dull. So you ask them to watch something like a breath, which is reasonably subtle, and they just can't see enough interest in there. There's not enough beauty in there because they're not seeing enough. It's just like seeing things like pastel. And it's not rich yet, but as your mindfulness goes stronger, it gets much richer. You know what it's like when you turn the lights. If we had a dimmer here, turn the lights down. As you turn the lights down, the colours, the reds and the blues, you can't see them anymore. They go very, very dull. It's just all greys. You turn it up, you can see the colours. So I had big spotlights. These reds and greens were almost like fluorescent. And it's nothing to do with the colours there. It's the light which you shine on them. And the light which you shine on them is the power of your mindfulness. It's nothing to do with the breath, but when your mindfulness is very sharp and very strong, you shine this enormous powerful light on the breath, and there's so much you can see there. That's why empowering mindfulness actually makes the whole meditation very, very easy. And it's why that the first couple of days I asked you to sleep, to rest, because the weakness in the body was draining your mindfulness. When the body feels at ease, your mindfulness goes up a level. The next thing to do is actually just to rest the mind, because your brain has been overworking as well. Rest the mind and the brain gets its energy levels up. And then you're bright and you're bouncy. That means the energy is up. And mindfulness, you can watch the breath, you can watch anything. You can just spend an hour watching a blade of grass. But when you came here, you could never do that. It was just boring. You'd die, you'd fall asleep, nothing going on. But when the mind wakes up, then you can really see. You're empowering mindfulness. So you see much more of what's going on. Which is what insight means. As many of the monks down at Serpentine keep on reminding me, the word Buddha, if you're going to be linguistically correct, does not mean the enlightened one. It means the awakened one. From the word bujati, to wake up. And it has a much nicer meaning, a more full meaning. Because when you say like the awakened one, what do you mean I'm awake? No, I got up at 4 o'clock this morning, I'm awake. But you can see what it really means, it's really awake. And you find as mindfulness gets more and more powerful, it is like you're waking up. You can actually see things clearly, and you can feel things deeply, you can know things thoroughly. Which is why you need that strong mindfulness to gain insight. To know things thoroughly and deeply, you need strong mindfulness. And this is what you're doing here. By resting, the mindfulness gets stronger and stronger and stronger. That's why it gets a lot of fun as well, because the food tastes so delicious. And the apples taste sweeter as the days go on, because your mindfulness is getting better. And the trees and the plants and everything looks so delightful. Simply because you're becoming far more sensitive. The mind is waking up, the mindfulness is becoming empowered. And that's a great fun to see that happening. So, let's answer that question. Fall asleep? Go for it. That's counterintuitive, but that's how it works. Any comments about that one? Okay. Dear Ajahn, can you please explain what we achieve this birth in our meditation, i.e. nimitta, jhana states? Does it continue in consecutive births, or does one start all over again? Look, I told present moment awareness. And even the retreat hasn't finished yet, you're already thinking of your next life. Gee, you really run ahead of yourself. But the answer is yeah, it usually does. You get like tendencies. Now what you did in this life, if you die, then those are the sort of tendencies you have in the next life. I forget who actually told me this, but I can't even remember sort of where it was. I travel around so much. But this lady told me that when she gave birth to her child, sort of, they were in I think a hospital or a bedroom or whatever, and the child was just playing on her tummy just after breastfeeding. And their child actually sat, crossed its legs in full lotus, put its hands on its lap, and started meditating. It really freaked her out, because the baby did it all by itself. Just a baby, just crawling around on the stomach, going goo goo gaga, whatever babies do. I'm a monk, so I don't know these things. And then it sort of sat, crossed its legs in lotus, and then hands on it, and it assumed a meditation posture. Gee, what's going on here? And so, she asked me what was going on. I said, it's obviously that was a meditator before. And, especially you've just been born and your previous life is not that far away, so very often you remember it. Babies can't speak and tell you, where they're from, what they've been doing. But, there was obviously a meditator from a previous life, just well fed and just nothing to do, so decided to meditate. And anyway, Mum's tummy is like a soft cushion anyway, isn't it? So that's what it was doing. So this is what happens. Sometimes you do keep whatever you learn in this life. You don't keep the details, but you keep the basic themes, the underlying tendencies of what goes on in your previous life. Goes on in your next life, sorry. So, also, would you please explain what particular karmas gets you to these states? What the particular karmas are, it's not so much what you've done in the past. Actually, what you've done in the past is good enough because it's got you here. The past karma has been fulfilled. It's got you on the cushion. Now it's the karma you're doing now. That's the most important. And that has to be this peaceful, passive karma. In other words, you've got here already. You made it onto the bus. Or it's like I say, when you get onto the aircraft, sometimes you have to rush to get to the aircraft. And you have to sort of, go through the immigration and the customs and make sure you got to the right gate. And, check this and check that. Find where your seat is. Put your bag in the overhead compartment. And then you can sit down. And as soon as you sit down, you don't have to do anything anymore. Now you can really relax. So, it's like your cushion is like sort of not the economy class, not the business class. This is first class on Buddha Air to enlightenment. So you're here already. You're sitting down. You've made it. Now you can just relax. Relax, be still, and enjoy the insight service. And that's what insight service is. You go on these planes, you don't even have to ask for anything. They come, do you want a cup of tea, sir? Do you want a breakfast, sir? Do you want alcohol? No. But they just come and bring you all these things, just like holding out your hand in the mango falls. That's what it's like on the airline. So you just sit down there and do nothing, and all these things come to you. And that's exactly what you do in meditation. Sit there and enjoy the insight service. And every now and again, this beautiful sort of meditation attendant comes to you and says, you want nimitta, sir? You want jhana, madam? How about stream winning? Do you want stream winning? It's handed to you on a plate, as long as you're still. I find it difficult to meditate at home. Yeah, well, just don't go home, stay here. Could you give some suggestions? I've given them on how to make the house conducive for meditation. Okay, throw out your TV. That's a bit hard. Conducive to meditation. Find if you've got a big house like people have in Australia, you can just find one room as your meditation room. Just going to Hong Kong. People live in such a small place, in apartments in Hong Kong. They really are cramped. And when you go to Hong Kong, you go to your house, and there's no such thing as a house in Perth. They're mansions compared to Hong Kong. Every house, you've got so much space. So use some of that space. You don't need like a family. People have family rooms, games rooms, TV rooms, all sorts of rooms. Let's have one room, a meditation room in your house. So if you've got a meditation room in your house, a place devoted to meditation, nothing else, it makes it much easier to meditate. Because it's the atmosphere builds up. That's why I meditate. It's the same that I say you can meditate in your room, but never meditate on your bed. Because you have what we call magnetic pillows. And they draw your head to them. Sometimes you can't stop it. It pulls it down. And the reason is psychologically the bed is where you go to sleep. And you sleep there so often. So that when you sit on it, the body and the mind say this is sleep time. So you're going to sleep there. Which is why it's nice to have a room especially for meditation. You meditate there again and again and again. And the psychology says this is where I meditate. So the mind is ready to meditate. It knows what it's supposed to do. And that's why it's very easy to meditate there. And if you haven't got a room, have a cupboard. People have got cupboards with all sorts of junk inside. I said wombats and kangaroos and all this other stuff. Check it all out, and that's your meditation cupboard. If you haven't got a cupboard, just a corner of your bedroom. Clear out all the rest of the junk. Put a cushion down there, put a statue, some pictures, and make that your little shrine corner. And don't do anything else except meditate in that corner. And you find it builds up the energy. The couple who come here, I blessed their house years and years ago. That's actually Ben and Irene, for those of you who know them. He was doing a lot of work on the gardens in Dhamma recently. But years and years ago, when they moved into a new house, I advised them to get a meditation room. They built a nice little meditation room. And they told me that their two kids, the kids are grown up now, boy and a girl, they had this big fight. Kids do have fights every now and again. And the little girl, was very badly not physically hurt, but emotionally hurt, was crying and sobbing. And where did she run to? Into the meditation room. So to sit down and be calm and quiet. And the parents told me that they never told her to go in the room. To her, that little girl, maybe 6 years of age, she understood that was a place of peace and calm. Because her mum and dad had always sat there meditating. And that was the place, the refuge she went to when she was really upset, having had a fight with her brother. I thought, what a great resource that is. Even kids understand that's the place to go and be peaceful. So, find a corner of your room. And that means that is your little meditation center. That's your temple. And every time you go, you can really relax. And the more times you meditate there, the easier it is to meditate. You build up an atmosphere there. Is that okay? Any questions on that? Okay. Dear Ajahn, does to rise with gusto mean the mental attitude of brightness and energy when waking up, or do you also mean jumping out of bed? Both. So, gusto means with energy and with life, with vim and vigour. So this is something you get in the habit of doing. When you get up, instead of just, what time is it? I don't want to get up. This is my holiday. What am I going to tell my friends when I go back to work? What did you do on the retreat? What do you do on your holidays? I got up at 4 o'clock every morning. They will think you're absolutely crazy. But don't think like that. And instead, because you think, I don't want to get up yet. You've got to get up every day, okay? You've got to get up sometime. So get it over and done with as quick as possible. Get it out of the way. You know, like you try and get things out of the way. Getting up out of the way. And once that's out of the way, you've got the whole day to look forward to. So that's the best thing to do. You rise, get out as soon as you possibly can, without even thinking about it. And then once you're up with gusto, you feel so much better. But if you really drag yourself out of bed, you get that whole feeling of like dragging yourself to the meditation, dragging yourself to the toilet, and dragging yourself, to the meditation, and dragging yourself through the chanting, and just drag, and just life becomes just a drag. And you feel like that, you feel like one of these cockroaches stuck in treacle, putting yourself through up a hill. And this life is just so tough. So just change your attitude. You've got to do it, so put fun into it. Anyway, next question. Oh yes, that's part of the gusto, the same question. It means the mental attitude and brightness energy when waking up, but do also mean jumping out of bed. Reason being that I've read in the medical research, I'm in trouble now, that getting out of bed too quickly could induce stroke or heart attacks. Oh my goodness, have you got insurance on this retreat? Medical research says getting out of bed too quickly can induce stroke or heart attacks, especially in the cold early morning. Now I will counter that because the sample which has been used by the medical fraternity, there's so few people get up out of bed that quickly on a cold early morning. I don't think they've got a wide enough sample of people. So is it better to have a mental attitude and get up slowly and calmly instead? Nah, you're going to die anyway, so get that over and done with as well. And getting up and dying at the same time. Very efficient. No, you won't get a heart attack or get stroke. Just jump up. Is it necessary to read Dhamma books and the suttas, or more important to concentrate our practice? Will we get more confused with too much information? You can get too much information, but you can also get too little information as well. In other words, you know some meditation, but you don't see how it all works together. And also, you get every Ajahn teaches something different. So which is the real Ajahns? Which are the ones who know the truth, and which are just making it up as they go along? Which have got the right teachings and the wrong teachings? And that's why getting into the suttas, the teachings of the Buddha, that is the basic groundwork. So you can actually check what I say, what other monks say with what the Buddha said. And if it's just wildly different, that there's something wrong there. If it's slightly different, there might be just a little emphasis there. But if it's pretty much fits into what the Buddha said, okay, that's a good monk, that's a good nun. They're teaching according to what the Buddha said. That's why it's great to read the Buddha's teachings. And you get the insights there which you never get from monks like me or from others, because basically I keep on saying the Buddha was the best teacher there ever was. Some of the stuff he says, because I know my meditation, you read what the Buddha said, wow, it's incredible how he said that. And what a wonderful way of saying it was. So I really love those suttas. But especially if you can read them in Pali and get beyond the translation, because every translator has their idiosyncrasies, and they do it slightly different than what actually is in there in the Pali. But when actually you can read it in the Pali and it's beautiful stuff. It's really inspiring. So it's great to do that. But don't just be just a sutta person and just read the suttas. Don't just become this professor and just argue about what the word means. You never actually follow the instructions. It's just, as I say, the person who just collects menus and translates the menus and compares the different menus from the different restaurants, but in the end goes hungry because he never orders any food. So if you keep the balance there, you've got the menu, so you know what's on offer, and you eat the food afterwards, then it's wonderful. So Dhamma books and suttas are great. But don't just do them. Do practice and study and get a balance.
Do you think listening to the Dhamma talks, especially the two classes, kind of has a bit of a subconscious effect when you're in meditation?
If you listen to some
over and over again?
if you listen to some of the explanations of the sutras or read it over and over and again, it does have a subconscious effect for sure. Because the mind is actually listening to those things, and whatever you listen to, the mind goes in that direction. I haven't talked about mantras yet, but I'll teach you a mantra. Now listen to what it does in your mind. Hatred. 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 As soon as you say that word, the mind actually goes in that direction. You feel very uncomfortable. But if you say like peace, peace, peace. Whatever you say, actually the mind goes a little bit towards that. Because all the words are signposts. When you have a signpost, you always look to where it's pointing. And this is why those words which the Buddha said are all signposts. You repeat them again and again, and you can't resist it. You look to where they're pointing, what that meaning is. And that's why it does encourage you to actually to go to that meaning, to go to that peace, that freedom, that truth. The more times you read it, the more times you hear it.
Do you think it subconsciously inclines you towards right view, as in the first?
Certainly. It's called, it's subconsciously, it's just called brainwashing. As I mentioned, I've been brainwashing you every morning, every evening. Actually, it's a very common brainwashing technique to actually early in the morning, just after some meditation, because that's when you're very susceptible to suggestions. And also, when you're brainwashing, you have to speak in a very low and monotonous voice to get under people's radar, so that no, that's some of the tricks of hypnosis. Yes.
So what book would you recommend to read?
Still a book. Well, John had a very nice one from Bhikkhu Bodhi's. What's it called? The Numerical Sayings. Yeah, it's an anthology. So you can actually show her that afterwards. That's a nice one. Very, very short, but very pithy. Okay, the next question here is it possible for a man earning a living in business to meditate for 1 hour in a day and reach or go beyond nimitta? Sure it is. I'm earning a living in the monk business, and I meditate for more than 1 hour a day. So, but if you mean like in ordinary business, yeah, sure, especially if it's your company and you're the boss. So no one can sack you for taking an hour off work and just meditating. And even in other businesses, sometimes you're allowed sort of an hour for lunch. Who needs lunch? Just go into your nice room and meditate. One of the people, a long time ago, people told me about this guy. He works in New York as a lawyer, a criminal lawyer, which is high stress. Because if you make a mistake, at least in those days, a fellow would go to the electric chair. You'd have to live with that. So it's very, very high stress, criminal law. And he would always get very, very stressed out. But he decided to meditate. And what he did, the only place he could find in his office to meditate was the cupboard. So he got with his secretary, cleared out the cupboard of all his old papers, had all his old papers of old files of this and that in the lawyer's office. He cleared out all the papers from the cupboard, and every lunchtime, only for half an hour, not an hour, every lunchtime his secretary locks him in the cupboard for half an hour. And if anyone rings or SMSs, I'm sorry, he's in his cupboard. And he does that because he knows he's relaxed, he does a much better job in the afternoon after his half an hour in the cupboard, and because he's locked in there, no one can get at him, and his secretary is more than happy to keep it very strictly, lock him up for half an hour every lunchtime, because he's a much nicer boss in the afternoon after he's been in his cupboard. So that's a very innovative way of finding space and doing that, a little bit of meditation every day. And he knows it's worthwhile because his efficiency increases. He's sharper, more clear, not so stressed. so you can perform to a higher level. So that's what you can do. So find a cupboard in your office and get someone to lock you in, but make sure they unlock it afterwards. Ajahn, before meditation, should I recite the precepts and asking for forgiveness from the triple gem, deities, the master, the human beings, and all of the creatures, only in the morning? Or it will be a business transaction or not if I request a blessing from the masters to help me to practice meditation with peaceful mind, and I will offer my goodness to them. Okay, you don't always need to recite the precepts. Usually we say only if you break the precepts you need to recite them again. But you can always remind yourself of the precepts just to inspire yourself. And it's called Silanusati, just remembering of your precepts, your purity, your goodness. And that's one of the methods the Buddha encouraged, which just arouses your energy and your self-esteem and your confidence. So if you do recite your precepts, you're doing it for remembering just you're a good, virtuous person, and your esteem is increasing. And you feel, wow, it's great, I deserve to meditate, because I keep in precepts. So that's why we can do that, just as an encouragement, and as a source of joy for ourselves. And asking for forgiveness, if you're into guilt, and you think that, oh, I've been lazy, I've done the wrong thing, then just ask forgiveness and get it over and done with. We don't always need to ask for forgiveness. And lastly, you have over here to and ask for the blessings from all sentient beings to help you. That can sometimes, again, help encourage you. It's not absolutely necessary, but it can be an encouragement. I remember reading this old meditation manual which was found in Sri Lanka about 100 years ago, and the Pali Text Society translated it. And it started off with, again, just remembering all the arahats, enlightened beings of the past. And all those, the one part I remember, all those enlightened beings were once at the stage you're on now. And they were tired when it got up in the morning and had a restless mind. And couldn't hardly sort of watch the breath at all. That all the arahats were once exactly where you are now. And they managed actually to, through wisdom, through skill, through perseverance, to break through and become completely enlightened. And sort of thinking like that, you realize that, yeah, I can do it as well. I'm no different. And it gives you encouragement. So you use the blessing of their examples, that they could do it. And you look at the sort of people who became enlightened in the time of the Buddha. And they were just ordinary people. From people who had no education like street sweepers. And people who were deformed like the hunchback Badal. Or the people who were prostitutes like Ambapali. Serial killers like Angulimala. And those were some of those who you think were unlikely candidates to become fully enlightened. And they managed to do it. So when you think like that, it's the blessing of their life stories that they could do it. Why can't I? So that's really what we mean by remembering those other beings, the masters, the mistresses, the ones who've gone before. And always remembering they were no different than you and I. And they could get enlightened. So therefore, so can I. And that gets you going, gets you encouraged. Next question. Is it possible that meditative experience could be due to chemicals released in the brain, e.g. like the highs due to endorphins released during exercise? Yet, next retreat, all we need to do is take a pill. We have the anti-sloth and torpor pill, and the anti-fantasy pill, and the anti-restlessness pill, and we'll just get your cocktails just for you. I'll get the interview and find out what's going on, and I just managed to get the dose just right. And unfortunately, it does not work that way, because there is obviously sort of a chemical result of meditation. I'm sure there's somebody actually took some scans of a person in jhanas, or even in the nibbita stage, when they get very, very happy and blissful, they'll see some endorphins being released. But it's the mind creates that state. And I think if you use those chemicals, like most chemicals, after a while, your tolerance builds up and the chemicals don't work anymore. But the mind states will always be working. Because this is part of the mind rather than part of the brain we're working with. So there's a chemical part to it though, but the chemical part is secondary, not primary. No, it's not the last question. Before meditation, yes I did that one, it is the last question. Last question, saving the best to the last. Dear teacher, politicking and Buddhism do not go hand in hand, isn't it? Well, sometimes I thought of starting a Buddhist political party in Australia. Because look, there's so many problems in this country, and that some of the people, some of these politicians, and some of the solutions they get are ridiculous. So, in my Buddhist party, we're going to solve the drought in Australia. It's very easy to solve the drought. We just ban beer. So much water gets lost in people drinking beer. Because what happens, I still remember when I used to go to the pub, you drink a pint of beer, then you go to the toilet and you just pee it all out again. It's just completely wasted. No water. So my Buddhist party, we're going to ban beer, first of all. For those of you who know Australia, we'll get anywhere. But no, that's why politicking and Buddhism don't mix, at least me in politics. My two bosses have a misunderstanding and they now hate one another. Okay? They both now talk through me. Both of them think I am their best friend. So what you should do, you should tell the first boss, so that my second boss wants to give me a raise. And he says, how much? He said, so $10 an hour. And the other boss, he said, no, that's not good enough, $15 an hour. And then you tell the other boss, and then the other boss. If they only talk through you. Anyway, they both now talk through me. Both of them think I'm their best friend. I tried hard to patch them both up, but it was impossible. One is a staunch Christian, and one is a Muslim. And you're a Buddhist. Gee, that's some office. Bit away. Okay, they trust me as I am a Buddhist. Isn't that wonderful? So they all like you. One thinks I'm his best friend, and the one thinks so too. I really can't stand the both of them. I said you say the best questions to the end. I can't stand the both of them. They confide in me, etc. I'm worried that one day they will discover me to be a double agent, and that'll be the end of me. They both like me so much now that I think I'm going to be promoted. There we go. I hate the situation I'm in now. Any advice? Easy. Convert them both to being Buddhists. I don't know. We have some good fun in life. So you've got two bosses, a Christian and a Muslim, and you're the Buddhist, and they're promoting you. It's actually, you should be very proud of yourself that that you are really being a good Buddhist. You're being a friend with both of them, which is wonderful. And they're both confiding in you. They feel safe with you. So that's obviously that you're a very, very good Buddhist. You're compassionate and caring, and they realise that. They want to promote you. So well done. And hopefully that you won't be able to solve it by saying some magic words or anything, but the very fact who you are, you're a person who can respect people. And don't care whether they're Muslim, Christian or whatever, you respect them for who they are. And that way, hopefully, that you can teach them by example. And the Christian doesn't need to change, we can become a better Christian, a softer Christian. The Muslim can become a sort of a more tolerant, moderate Muslim. And that way they become better people. So it's wonderful that you're there, just being who you are, and having a good influence on them. You may not be able to solve the whole problem, at least you'll be able to influence it to the better by being kind and listening. And maybe every now and again, if they like you, by giving some good advice. Just say, the other guy, he's not that bad a fellow. He may be a Muslim, but he's a nice guy. He believes in God just like you do. And you say to the Muslim, that Christian, he's okay, he's not such a bad fellow. And praise the other. And maybe that might sort of think, allow them to see the other person in a different light. At least in a better light, eventually. So anyway, but thank you for that question, because that's a great question for entertaining us. And the job of a Buddhist is actually to try and create some harmony between people. Not to change people, but to create a bit of harmony, if you possibly can. If you can't change the situation, just like the attitude towards restlessness and to the breath, just leave it alone and make peace with it, and just be kind. Because you're doing your best. You're making good karma. Whatever they do, it's really up to them. So, very well, that question, obviously a very nice person, that both of them think you're their best friend. What a wonderful thing that is. Okay, so that ends the questions for tonight. So now is the time to meditate, either here on your cushion or chair, or flat out on your bed. And have a nice evening. And remember, tomorrow morning, just risk the heart attack and stroke. Rise with gusto and just see what happens. And if you do get that stroke, I better get out of the country. I'm going to England next week anyway, so I can actually escape the consequences. So I don't think you're going to get a stroke or anything. So anyway, so have a nice evening and see you tomorrow morning.